Hi everyone, welcome to the lesson on dangling and misplaced modifiers. Now, dangling modifiers is a type of question that shows up on the SAT. And it's really kind of easy once you understand what a dangling modifier is and how to find it. So that's what we're going to look at today. Today we're going to look at how to figure out whether you have a dangling modifier, and then we're going to figure out how to fix it if you do see one. So before we get started, let's just definitions. Now, I just want you to focus right down here for a second. What is a dangling modifier? Now, here's my definition. A dangling modifier is a participle phrase that does not modify a noun correctly. In other words, what I mean by that is there's some kind of phrase, some kind of modifier that tries to describe a noun and it doesn't describe the noun correctly. And the real way that it happens is it describes a noun that can't actually do that action. So yeah, we'll see some examples in a little bit. The other one that's closely related to the dangling modifier is really the misplaced modifier. Misplaced modifier is really the same thing. It's just a participle phrase that this time it modifies the wrong noun. So like maybe the noun can actually do the action, like in theory, but that's not what you're trying to say. That's not what you mean. And so if you put a modifier, and that's really what a modifier is, it's just any adjective. So anything that tries to modify a noun or describe a noun, if you put it next to the wrong noun and it ends up describing the wrong thing, then you have what's called a misplaced modifier. So let's take a look at the main rule here, and this is it. If you can memorize this one main rule, you'll be able to solve all the dangling modifier questions that show up. And here it is. If there is a participle phrase that describes a noun, you've got to make sure that the noun can be described by that phrase properly. And what I mean by that is that it can perform the action that's mentioned, or I mean, in the case that that's not an action, make sure that the noun is able to have the characteristics that the adjective or modifier is trying to say. As long as it fits these two conditions, then you pretty much have a non-dangling modifier, or like a good modifier. If it doesn't fit this condition, then you have a dangling modifier. So let's take a look at a couple examples really fast, and we'll see if these hold up to the test and if they work or not. The first one is a sentence that says, climbing really fast up the tree, the monkey ate the banana that he stole from the gorilla. And so right over here, if we look, we have climbing really fast up the tree. That is a phrase, and that is our participle phrase. That is our modifier. It is trying to describe something. Let's see what it describes. Right over here. Yeah, it's describing monkey. And so we just asked ourselves a question. Let's see. Can a monkey climb up really fast on a tree? And yeah, last time I checked, monkeys are able to climb up trees. So that's okay. So we have climbing, describing monkey. We're okay. Let's take a look at this other example. The monkey threw his poop at the gorilla walking next to the tree. Now you got to sort of picture this one and imagine this. I see my modifier right here, walking next to the tree. That's my modifier. And what is it describing? Well, let's see, it's not the monkey that's walking next to the tree, it's the gorilla. It's right next to the gorilla. So we have right here a gorilla walking next to the tree. And we say, is that possible? Can gorillas walk next to trees? Sure, yeah, they can walk, and so this is okay. In this case, you have a monkey throwing poo at a gorilla that happens to be walking next to a tree. So these are examples of sentences that are actually well written. They're all okay. You do not have a dangling modifier in these examples. These are good examples. Now let's take a look at this picture. Wow, that's really pretty. That's a really nice sunset. So just imagine someone writes this sentence right here to describe this scenario. Walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful. Oh, that sounds good. At first glance, that sounds great. It sounds romantic, and all the girls are like, "Oh yeah, you have my boyfriend's so romantic. Yesterday, walking down the beach, oh the sunset was so beautiful." And so it even sounds really good, and like I can imagine myself walking down a beach, and I can imagine the sunset being beautiful, and so. At first glance, I might even be tempted to say that this sentence is good, but let's look really closely. What do we have here? We have a modifier right here, walking down the beach. So somebody is walking down the beach. Whoa, hold on. Who is walking down the beach? Let's see. Well, right now, as it stands, it's actually the sunset that's walking down the beach. You've got the sunset walking down the beach, and I do not think that that is a good idea. Sunsets don't walk, unless, of course, this guy right over here. Unless you happen to be talking about this guy, and you have a sunset that is walking down a beach, like that. Unless you happen to be talking about that, then you have right now a dangling modifier. So how do we fix this? Right now we have walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful, and the sunset can't walk. Sunsets can't walk, and so we need to do something about that. Let's go ahead and move this arrow somewhere over here for a second, and let's figure out how we could rewrite this sentence to make it work. One way that you could make this work is you could say, one of the ways you could fix this is you could specify who's the one that's actually walking. So instead of saying walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful, you could say walking down the beach, I thought the sunset was beautiful. It's beautiful, like that. We'll make that a little bit bigger, then you can see the whole thing. And let me move that there. Walking down the beach, I thought the sunset was beautiful. That way, in this case, in this sentence, you have walking down the beach, and instead of talking about the sunset walking down the beach, I have I am the one that's walking down the beach, and I thought the sunset was beautiful. I forgot a period there. You can actually just put that there. And that is a properly written sentence. Now, there is another way you could fix that. You could say something like, while I was walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful. Let's go ahead and put a period there. Let's move that down there. In this case, when I say, while I was walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful, I can keep the second part. I could keep that second part, the sunset was beautiful. Maybe I want that in my sentence, and that's cool. But as long as I have here, while I was walking down the beach, now I have walking describing I, and I am able to walk down the beach, and so that is cool, and we are happy. These are two ways that you can write the sentence correctly. So, walking down the beach, I thought the sunset was beautiful, or while I was walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful. So here I have for you basically the four-step process that I used to figure out whether or not something was a dangling modifier. And it's outlined here for you right now in 4 steps. Step number 1, find the modifier. And remember, it's usually just going to be a participle phrase, something like walking down the beach. Yeah, when you see that, walking down the beach, that's a modifier. The second step is to find the noun that it tries to modify. And it's usually the noun that's closest to the phrase. In our example, we had walking down the beach, the sunset was beautiful, and so we had sunset as the noun that was being modified. Now, we had to ask ourselves a question, and that question is, can a sunset walk? And the answer is no. Sunsets do not walk, and so since it is no, then we have a dangling modifier. If you see that, then you have to fix it. So if you're doing an SAT question and you see that, you have to circle it and say that that's wrong, or you have to fix it and pick the one that does not have a dangling modifier. Let's take a look at another example right here. This one, it says, sitting by the fire, the marshmallows were roasting nicely. And at first glance, like, you could even look at that picture and you could say, yeah, that makes sense. So there's a bunch of campers and they're roasting marshmallows by a fire, and they're sitting by the fire, and so I could write, sitting by the fire, the marshmallows were roasting nicely. Now let's follow our 4-step process and see if we could figure this out. The first thing is, do I have a modifier? And yep, I do, right here. Sitting by the fire. That is a modifier. Sitting by the fire, let's see, what is sitting by the fire? Well, it seems right now I'm missing the correct subject. Right now, as it stands, I have the marshmallows over here, and they are sitting by the fire. The marshmallows can't sit by the fire. Here, indeed, we have a dangling modifier. What we really have is something more like this picture over here. Yep, that's what the sentence actually says right now. Sitting by the fire, the marshmallows were roasting nicely. So you got a marshmallow that is roasting, I guess, some people over here. Wow, yeah, that's surprisingly very morbid. Yeah, so you've got to be clear when you're writing. You can't have sitting by the fire, marshmallows were the ones doing the roasting. You've got to fix the sentence and have something like this maybe. I could say, sitting by the fire, the campers were roasting marshmallows. Yeah, marshmallows. I could have something like that. Or I could have also alternatively something like this. While the campers were sitting by the fire, the marshmallows were roasting nicely. There you go. These are 2 examples of sentences that would work. Sitting by the fire, the campers were roasting marshmallows. Here now I have sitting by the fire describing campers, and that's okay because campers can sit by fires. And over here, I kept the second part the same. The marshmallows were roasting nicely. I kept that the same, and instead I just have the campers were sitting. Oh, that's terrible. That's actually a grammar mistake right there. While the campers were sitting by the fire, the marshmallows were roasting nicely. And so these, again, are 2 examples of sentences that are correctly written. Now let's take a look at an example of a misplaced modifier. Now here, we're going to see an example of something where the modifier could work, but then it just happens to be describing the wrong thing. I just put it in the wrong place, and that's why it's called a misplaced modifier. It's just put in the wrong place. Suppose I have the sentence that reads like this. I saw a family of ducks walking to school. And at first that sounds even okay, like deceptively okay. Like I'm walking to school, and then while I'm walking to school, I see like a family of ducks. And that is what I have a picture of in my mind when I read this sentence. But let's take a look at it a little bit more closely. I saw a family of ducks walking to school. And so over here I have a modifier for sure, walking to school. And the rule with modifiers, and this is the rule of all adjectives, is that generally you want to place the modifier as close to the noun that you're describing as possible. As close to the noun that you're describing as possible. So in this case, I saw a family of ducks walking to school. The closest noun here is ducks. And so, unless the ducks are the ones walking to school, then I have what's called a misplaced modifier. Now here, unless this picture over here is what I happen to have in mind of baby ducks walking to school, then that's not how I'm supposed to write the sentence. Or maybe I have this picture in mind over here with Donald Duck and Huey, Dewey, and Louie walking to school. Now, unless unless any of these two are the concepts that I have in mind as I'm writing the sentence, then I have a misplaced modifier. If I want to say that I'm the one walking to school, then I'd have to write the sentence like, let's see, I have to write the sentence, while I was walking to school, let's make that a little bigger, while I was walking to school, I saw a family of ducks. There you go. While I was walking to school, I saw a family of ducks. And that is one way I could write the sentence. The other way I could write the sentence is to say something like this. Maybe a little bit simpler. Walking to school, I saw a family of ducks. Let's look at that here. And so what you'll see is the original sentence was, I saw a family of ducks walking to school, and I had walking to school at the end. All I had to do to make it a correctly placed modifier is to move it to the front, and I have walking to school, I saw a family of ducks. But before it was the ducks were walking to school, and that's why it was a misplaced modifier. Now I have I walking to school. Sounds good to me. This is, again, okay. Now let's try a few examples together to see if you guys can detect dangling modifiers and then fix them. So the first one is this. Hitting the handball really hard. The rubber ball popped when it touched the barbed wire. Now, at first glance, I can understand what the author is trying to say with this, but instead there seems to be a dangling modifier. Let's see. Hitting the handball really hard, that is a modifier. Right now, as it stands, who's the one hitting the handball really hard? It is the rubber ball. So we have a rubber ball hitting another handball. Yeah, I can't even imagine how that would look. So this is clearly a dangling modifier. The way to fix this would be to shift this around and say, after I hit the handball really hard, the rubber ball popped when it touched the barbed wire. And yeah, so that is one correct way to write the sentence. After I hit the handball really hard, it popped when it touched the barbed wire. Now we can move that to the side here, and there's another way that we could write this sentence to make it correct. Probably an easier way that we can write this sentence and make it correct. And that would be, hitting the handball really hard, I popped the rubber ball when it touched the barbed wire. And here you go. Hitting the handball really hard, I popped the rubber ball when it touched the barbed wire. And so this way I keep the modifier as it is, hitting the handball really hard, but I insert the subject I, and then now I am the one that is hitting the handball, and so again this sentence is now okay. Well, let's take a look at one more example over here. And so again the sentence originally reads, jumping from tree to tree, the ninja's weapons fell out of the bag. And yeah, maybe if you're like me, you really like ninjas, and even now you're picturing like a Naruto or something like that, and he's just like in the Hidden Leaf Village or whatever he's doing. That's a terrible symbol. Let's try that again. And you're like me, and you're thinking, yeah, like there's a Naruto, and he's just like a good, epically cool ninja, and he's from the Hidden Leaf Village, and he's jumping around from tree to tree, and all of a sudden his weapons fall out of his bag. Now that's what the sentence is clearly trying to say, but if you look very carefully, I have jumping from tree to tree, the ninja, wait a minute, no, it's not the ninja, it's the ninja's weapons. So I have here weapons like shuriken and stuff like that, and like knives or whatever, and these things are jumping from tree to tree, and that is clearly not good, because if you ask the question, can weapons jump from tree to tree, the answer is no, and so we got to do something to fix this sentence. Here, let me go ahead and erase all of these nice pictures over here. And see, so how do we fix this? So I don't want the weapons to jump from tree to tree. I want the ninja to jump from tree to tree. So there's a couple things I could do. One way I could fix this is I could write the sentence like this. Jumping from tree to tree, the ninja dropped his weapons from his bag. Now in this case here, I have, again, the same jumping from tree to tree, and this time though, it's modifying ninja. Awesome. A ninja can jump from tree to tree, and then we're okay. This one is okay. Let me just move all this stuff to the other side over here. There's another way I could write the sentence that would still be correct. I could also write it like this. While the ninja was jumping from tree to tree, his weapons fell from his bag. In this case, I solved the problem by just making the ninja was jumping right here. So I do have a ninja as the one that's jumping. And so, again, this is another way that's okay to write the sentence. And so again, let's just recap really quickly what the steps are for figuring out whether you have a dangling modifier are. And again, they're just right here. You just take any sentence, read it. Step 1, find the modifier. It's usually going to be a participle phrase, something like walking down the beach. And then you've got to find the noun that it modifies, and it's usually going to be the one right next to the participle phrase. And then you got to ask the simple question, can whatever that thing being modified be modified that way? So in other words, like, can a sunset walk? Or is this talking about the sunset? And if your answer is yes, then you're okay. But if your answer is no, as in the case with the sunset walking, then you do have a dangling modifier. So I hope this helps you figure out what a dangling modifier is and how to fix all that stuff for the SAT. And yep, that's the lesson for today.